All right, so let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just a couple quick introductory remarks as we get started. This is this week's webinar from the Ability Center. And, you know, we started this series a couple months ago now with the idea of trying to make sure that we are bringing valuable information using new and creative platforms like all of the various technologies we have been learning about in this time. But in the midst of this COVID-19 year that we're all experiencing together, we wanted to make sure to bring valuable information to our consumers, to our key stakeholders and friends of the organization. And so we've had some really great conversations with other leaders of disability organizations throughout the community, other partners. We had a really great webinar with Kim Dunham from TARTA, learning about public transportation and where TARTA is headed. We've had some other webinars as well that I would encourage you to check out on our website. But today is the second week of a series we put together in June all around health and well-being. So last week we talked with a program director at the Metro Parks, learning all about their programming in ways that it is accessible, and people may not even know that. Today we're going to be talking about the concept and the subject of self-care. And next week we are going to be talking with a friend of the organization about telehealth and all of the various ways that we can actually do, medical, take care of our medical needs using technology. And then in the final week in June, we are going to be hearing from just a really great friend of the organization, Al Condalucci, which will be a great conversation. That's on the 25th of June. So that's a bit of a rundown. A couple things about the platform we're using here. So we're on Zoom. There is closed caption available if you are interested in that. We also have our wonderful friend and interpreter with us. Also, there are two ways that you can ask questions. If you're on the Zoom call, you can leave a question in the chat, or there's also a feature that I've learned about on the bottom kind of bar on your screen called Q&A. So you can leave a question there, and I'll be sure to look for those. I would encourage you to ask any question that comes to mind. We want to get into this subject, to get into this topic, but then also hear from those participating and answer any questions you may have. So let's continue in our health and well-being series in this month of June. And I wanted to ask our guests, this is a tough one, everyone, to remember our friends' names because they are both named Jen, which is a wonderful thing. So I'm going to go with Jen M and Jen W. Is that all right if I differentiate that way? Perfect. Jen W., would you mind give us an introduction to who you are and what you do in our community?
Awesome. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I'm the Director of Suicide Prevention for Lucas County Suicide Prevention Coalition, which is the longest name of things ever. But basically, I work in the community, whether it's with students or, excuse me, teachers and educators, anybody who wants to learn about how to prevent suicide and how to be a part of the stigma busting that comes around living with mental illness. As myself, I have 3 diagnoses, so I really try to come from a peer support perspective because of the challenges that I have faced. And I'm also working with youth that have been sex trafficked as well as inmates at the county jail for mental health.
Thank you. Those are a lot of big things to be working with on a daily basis. So I'm really glad that you're here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jen M., tell us about yourself and your work.
So my name is Jen McCullough, and I'm involved in a couple of different things. I've been teaching healing arts in the area, the greater Toledo area, for 20 years now. It's hard to believe that. I own a business called Integration Yoga with Jen, and I work with a wide variety of groups in a wide variety of venues to promote wellness, mainly through the practice of yoga and meditation. I also am a faculty member on the Toledo Mindfulness Institute. And what I do is I implement mindfulness programming in area schools, including some elementary schools in TPS, Bowser High School in TPS, Perrysburg High School, Anthony Wayne schools. So bringing mindfulness programming directly to the youth. I also offer training for educators and community leaders on how to, first of all, learning what in the world mindfulness is and how it actually is applicable and relevant with regard to social and emotional learning in those environments.
Thank you so much for that. So I wanted to begin with both of you. If you could think about the concept of self-care, that's our topic here today. I was curious how both of you would define that. When you think about self-care, what comes to mind? Maybe even reflect on how the topic has grown and gained traction in our culture and society. And just in general, reflect on the idea. I think to set the context would be really helpful for our conversation this morning. Let's go with Jen W again. When you think of self-care, how would you define that?
Self-care, for me personally, is just making conscious decisions and choices that allow me to be my very best personally, and which ends up affecting me professionally, of course. And I do think over time, we've learned that coping skills, no matter what you are being faced with, they're not a one-size-fits-all box. I remember when I first started doing suicide prevention, there was like a list of like 10 coping skills, and I really didn't find any of them relaxing. They stress me out because I'm not artistic or whatever it might be. So I think over time we've really started to understand, what works for one person as a coping skill or to feel good and be healthy is definitely not the same for others. So I think we're definitely expanding on that idea in the mental health world.
Jen M, what would you say?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think of what Jen W said about, making conscious choices. Because a lot of times we get so stressed out and we don't even know that we're stressed out until we get a headache, until we snap at somebody. And so that's where mindfulness comes in for me, is developing practices that help me be aware of when my stress level is gotten to the point where I'm no longer as effective as I could be. And then once I know that's going on, I can actually choose from a handful of items that actually work for me personally. And Jen W mentioned how it isn't a one size fits all. Like what helps me de-stress might actually stress someone else out. So, reflecting on things that we already know that help us relax. I mean, even thinking back to when we were kids, like things like, oh, wow, taking a break and being out in nature and not really having an agenda. Wow, I remember that being really cool when I was much younger. Well, what can I do as an adult to tap into those types of activities? So it's not necessarily you have to sign up for anything or think of something new. It's possibly reflecting on what actually works for you already, maybe from a different time in your life. So I think there's the category of actions, and as Jen said, to consciously do them. And then on the flip, so for me, I mean, I might be like, go to the park, pet my animals, play a game with my kids. I mean, I have literally, I have a Google Doc with the lists of things that work for me. And it's kind of like, if you're having a crappy day, Jen, go do one of these things, okay? Then there's the category of things to stop doing. So it's not just do more stuff, it's the things to stop doing. For me, it's to get off Facebook. For me, it's get out of the chair at my office desk and move, go do something different. You know, turn on some music, although that's an addition. So, but the thing is to stop doing certain things. You know, take a break from the screen. For me, I guess that's just a really number one huge part for people, is to stop with all of the input, because we're constantly bombarded with information, and you know, I can't keep up with it. I can't keep up with all of it. And so at some point it's like, turn it off. I'll never forget seeing a bumper sticker on many cars. I need to get one. So if someone knows where I can get one, it says turn off. Actually, I think it said kill your television, but like, turn off your television. Like, stop doing certain things that just are adding to the cacophony, and that adds so much stress.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to that point, we're in this moment where, you know, I mean, literally in front of me, I have two computer screens and a phone next to me, and you know, and there's so many, and you know, there's so much good that comes with this technology. But so if you're not careful, I think the point you're making that I really appreciate is it can turn into a bit of a fire hose that is just constantly, constantly overloading what you think is your life, when in fact it's actually not your life, it's something else. So that's great. Thank you for helping with that. So let's talk about what gets in the way of self-care, this conscious choice. I love that Jen W said that, like this, making this conscious choice. What are some challenges that you find, or that you even see others deal with, when it comes to making that conscious choice to care for themselves and invest in themselves?
For those of us that work in the people serving world, it's really hard. I won't speak for everyone, I think, but many people feel that it's really hard to allow yourself to do things that are very enjoyable, that make you very happy, because a lot of times you're focused on what others do not have. Or how, like, I work with youth that have been sex trafficked. I work with families that have lost someone to suicide. So being in my position, I almost feel like it's wrong of me to enjoy certain things because I know other people are suffering, and I had to get through that and process through that on my own. But you know, I have a little one. She deserves to have fun. She gets 100% of me when I mentally clock out, and I have to mentally clock out, because I'm sure, Sam, you know this from all the things that you do. If you don't intentionally clock out of everything work, you'll never stop. And for other people, it might be just feeling burdened with, you know, maybe I need a ride to do something that I really want to do, but I can't bring myself to ask for it because maybe my family already does so much for me, or other things that get in the way that maybe no one else is thinking of, but it's this mental block, especially if you struggle with anxiety like I do. A mountain or a molehill really turns into a mountain, and really all it took was a question. Do you mind helping me? Or I'd really love to do this thing. So, you know, just our own fears and insecurities really often do get in the way of doing things that bring us joy. And, you know, coming from my background, I literally had nothing when I was a kid. Like I didn't have like a caring mother. She gave me away and all these things. So when I got older and I started working really hard and now I have nice things, I almost felt like I didn't deserve those nice things, because everyone that comes from what I come from, they're in a totally different position in life. But that's because I made, great choices to do better and be better. But it still allows me to feel that guilt sometimes to enjoy things. So, for anyone that struggles with that, where they feel like they don't deserve something based on maybe past choices or just where they come from, or feel like they're too much of a burden, which I think is probably a huge thing. Especially when I work with people that have attempted suicide, or they even have very difficult depression. They often feel such a burden to the world, that maybe I don't really deserve to have joy. And that's really unfortunate. So I hope that we can get that message across to the people we serve, as well as our colleagues, in this people serving world.
You hit on so many points there that I really, really appreciate. It feels to me that a lot of what you're saying is one of the conscious choices we can make is to choose to remind ourselves that we are worthy of fill in the blank, right? And the point that you made too, that I think is really, really interesting, is you said sometimes it might just be asking someone for something. And if you feel like you're always doing that, then maybe one more is just, oh, I shouldn't bother, I shouldn't do that. But the conscious choice of reminding ourselves that we are worthy of that's really, really good. Well, Jen M, I don't want to continue to let Jen W take all the good answers before you get to react. But I know you both have a lot of really great stuff to share. So when you think about this, how would you describe some of the challenges or the obstacles to people actually caring for themselves?
I think some people are just too busy. People are so busy. I mean, I think about people that are working all day long, then they have to cook. I mean, I think as a single mom, I'm working, I have to plan food, I have to actually prepare it and do it. I'm caring for others. I care for others through my work, like what Jen was saying. And then at the end of the day, it can be exhausting, when you just want to crash. And so there's always just being really busy or just having so much to do. And I think in particular for those who may even be working multiple jobs, who are just trying to get by, just focusing on getting basic needs met, it almost seems like self-care is a luxury. And I think also self-care, I think Jen hit on a good point about how self-care could just be asking for help, because I think sometimes people envision self-care as paying for a massage or going on a vacation, or like it costs money. So I think it may seem inaccessible to do self-care because of what self-care is. And I think just continuing that conversation of what does it mean to take care of ourselves? What does it mean? Like for me, I had enough things, I wanted to get enough sleep today. I needed to eat, do my yoga practice, do some other dogs, cats, water the plants, all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I better like clean myself up before this Zoom call. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to have wet hair, kind of yeah. So, it's all self-care to me is letting go of having to be perfect for the world and actually just being real. Like, look, I have many things to do and I needed to take a shower, and I wasn't going to get up at 3 a.m. and cut off my sleep just so I can look a particular way for other people. So, trying to find that balance. Uh-oh. Okay, sorry, low battery. Let's see. Again, I think just too many things pulling for our attention and just being aware when that's happening. You know, Sam, you mentioned earlier the fire hose of just like the information coming at us constantly, constantly, constantly. And that has its own like overwhelming impact on us. Here, another way I look at it is like, you know, let's say I wake up in the morning and I want to, you know, have fresh energy and I want to go do my day. It's kind of like having a fresh like a brand new garden hose. Yeah. And you know, when you have a brand new garden hose and you go to water a flower or whatever, all the water goes where you want it, right? But if you have a ratty old garden hose, and it's leaking and it's cracked and all this stuff, you know, all of this water is spurting out the sides. So when you go to water your flower, there's just this trickle of energy coming out. And so looking at, you know, that comparison, okay, what can we do to refresh ourselves? Like, okay, this particular hose is not working for me anymore. I've got to, you know, plug up the holes, get refreshed so my energy level is back up to where I need to be operating at my optimum energy level. And getting to, and I think finally, when I think of my self-care, getting past that weird notion, I know I had to get past this, that self-care is selfish. Because it's the classic example of putting your oxygen mask on first. You know, I am not going to be able to do the social activism, the family care, the healing arts work, the teaching, if I am not fresh, if I'm not taking care of myself. There's just no way. I'll burn out and then I'm ineffective. So we have to look a few steps ahead, not just that immediate, oh, I don't deserve it. No, it's like, actually, in order for me to impact the world, I have to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we all, excuse me, we all are in various positions where people count on us, where people need us in some way. That is what it means to be in this human experience and have community and family and friends and pets and, you know, all kinds of different lives that are interacting with ours, and we're giving ourselves to them. And so I love the concept of really analyzing, what are we giving away? Is it something that we want, that we would be proud of, or that we would feel confident in, that it's that it's the highest quality it can be? I think that's a really, really good image. So I'm going to take a quick break here and do something I haven't done yet on one of these webinars. And I see some of the people on the participant list are actually some of our staff at the Ability Center. And so I'm curious if I'm trying to prompt them if they have any questions. When you think about some of the consumers that we work with on a daily basis, what topics or ideas relative to self-care would be interesting to ask our two friends and panelists here? So if you have any questions, throw those in the chat, and I'll make sure to relay those questions. I have one more when you sparked a few others, so I might have some other questions as well. Let's talk about some advice, tips, and tricks. We've kind of opened up the box a little bit on what it is, what stands in the way. You know, I think Jen M., you've given some different, you know, advice or examples from your own life, but I'm curious, you know, let's say that someone may not have really ever thought about this in this way. You know, I think that's probably not as rare. I should say, I think it's more common than we probably know. There's probably a lot of people who might be watching this or listening to this and thinking, yeah, I mean, I have things I like to do, but I've never thought of them as an investment in myself. I've never thought of that as, intentionally caring for myself, making a conscious choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is a new concept, what are some tips and tricks and advice that you might give? And let's keep the order going here. Jen W., what do you think?
So, excuse me, like the other Jen mentioned, it's not always a bubble bath, or, I see all these like commercials or like Kardashians of the world, like self-care is my spray tan. Well, I actually do have a spray tan on, but that's not my self-care. Choosing to hang around people that have similar morals and values to me is probably my number one thing. I think that it's important that everyone can practice that. I can imagine consumers might not always have the ability to pick and choose who they're with at all times, but if you can, voice your opinion and voice your needs and say, being around some people really brings me down, or it kind of makes me have a bad attitude. I removed somebody that I've known for 15 years from my Facebook page. She messaged me and I said, I really like you, but your stuff just bums me out, and I can't take any extra negativity in my life. I work in suicide prevention. I get text messages where I wake up to awful news. The last thing I want to do at the end of my day when I'm trying to share my pet bunnies and my 5.5-year-old with the world is read about someone who is making choices that are very unhealthy and enable themselves to be not their best. So your very, very basic things, hanging out with awesome, positive people that their morals and values align, getting plenty of rest, like Jen said. I am 100% sure that my brain health is not where it's supposed to be in terms of my mental illnesses if I'm not well rested, if I don't have a routine. Routine creates great habits. So I wake up, I take my medication, I shower, I feed my animals. For a lot of us, especially during COVID, things have been upside down. So even if I'm not leaving my house, I'm on this webinar, I still showered. You're welcome. I still have to have my routine because I will flip upside down with my positivity will go here, my negativity will go here. Eating great things that are nourishing for your body, although it's way more fun to eat that strawberry shortcake right before you go to bed. But minimizing that processed sugar and things like that, that is overall affecting your entire body. And if you have mental illness, it does affect your brain health, and it does affect your ability to thrive and think clearly, especially if you're like me. I'm on like a borderline diabetic place, so I cannot risk adding that to the list of things that I struggle with. So those are just some everyday basic things that you don't really have to physically do an activity, but it's just creating a positive, routine, structured lifestyle that your body's like, okay, I could get used to this. That's self-care also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that you hit on the point of community and relationships in the first thing that you said. I am, anyone that knows me knows that I am I tip the scales on the extrovert spectrum. I'm about as I can be. I could talk to people. I could talk to people all day long and I would be fired up at the end of it. It doesn't take any energy from me. My wife is, go figure, the exact opposite of that. So a quarantined life has been no problem for her in many, many ways. But the reason I bring that up is the point you're making applies equally to both of us. It applies equally to both of us. Community, and the way that you framed it, I really appreciate the fact that surrounding yourself with people who have similar values to you, and doing that to whatever degree, I think is really, really interesting. You also hit on something that I was hoping we would get to, and I wasn't sure. And that is, it's just interesting moment when the things that we think are helpful actually kind of flip on us, right? You mentioned the food at the end of the day. Like, yeah, I love to, it might be fun to eat that food, but it's actually, you're going to pay for it later, right? And that's just an interesting point, how the lines kind of ebb and flow, so to speak. But hey, no one came to this thing to hear me talk. Jen M, fire away, tips and tricks. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely have a routine. And part of that routine, I mean, think about it. Many of us have schedules, you know, we have our work schedules, all of these things. For me, I have a motto. Some of you may have heard of this, and I teach it to my own kids. But this is a go-to. Plan your work, work your plan. Plan your work your plan. So every Sunday, we sit down as a family and we kind of plan out our week. I do my own personal things, plan my work, and then as the week goes on, I just work the plan that my higher self already kind of took care of. It doesn't mean it doesn't flex, because you have to be responsive because, you know, life, right? But in that plan, it's not just go to work. Sometimes I literally will schedule a shower because I don't have like a showering routine, but I schedule it depending on what's going on any given day, because every day is different for me. So plan your work, work your plan. To me, that's a go-to, because then if I know I'm having a week that's filled, say, with anxiety, or there's just a lot of turmoil going on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? What do I do now? Just look at my plan. Just do what I told myself to do. So I found that to be really useful. And on that plan, I will make sure I have things that are self-care. Like I will put on there something every day, like a walk at the park, or I just got kayaks, so you better believe that's going to go on there. But I also might just say, you know, take 10 minutes and sit on the porch without my phone. You know, I like literally write it into my plan, just like for the day, like go to Kroger, do this, sit on the porch for 5 minutes, you know, whatever it is. So I know I'm actually scheduling it in. Power of the group is essential. So if, say, you think, oh, I heard meditation can be helpful, or I heard yoga can be helpful, but I don't really know where to start. Having a group to practice with can be very helpful to keep that practice sustained. Because I know if I just try to do everything on my own, things fizzle. You know, I might start strong and then it goes away. So for me, I'm involved with groups that also meditate or also do yoga. These days, of course, sometimes online or outside, but that helps to keep the momentum going. Yeah, so getting self-care on your schedule, like as an actionable item, is essential. Because if we just like kind of hope we do it, it's not going to get done sometimes.
Hey, Sam, can I add one little thing?
Of course.
So I was also thinking about caretakers and how very much of a caretaker's day is, well, taking care of someone. And while that might be the most favorite thing that person gets to do, like, wow, how blessed am I to have a lifestyle where I could do that? That caretaker also really has to think about the things that they also enjoy that have nothing to do with caretaking, to you know, bring them joy, to do something to get a little bit of a mental break, if that means, if you have the ability to do like respite care, and you know what, I just want to go to Wildwood and walk for 30 minutes or whatever that might be. You know, I think oftentimes people that like us in the people serving world caretakers think, well, I don't really deserve to have that, or I don't have it as bad as so and so. So that's out of line for me to want that, and that's not the case. So whether you're a consumer, somebody that works professionally, or a caretaker, and a lot of us are multiple of those things, what brings you joy and what is considered self-care for you might be different based on those roles, and never to feel guilty or, like I mentioned earlier, that I sometimes feel like I don't deserve things because I come from literally nothing. But that's not true. Every one of us deserves to do things that bring us joy, regardless of the community we're in or where we come from.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I had one other thing I wanted to say too. I love everything that, Jen, that you're sharing. It's just so like spot on. It's wonderful. This term, this accessibility that we talk about, and, having access to information, or access to a group, or access to the resources that get you plugged into a particular, sorry, I might have to do a little self-care with my phone, get the battery charger, 10% left. Okay, so, but this notion of accessibility, for me, accessibility to the present moment can be very powerful. So just very briefly, I know if I'm really mad, stressed, it may have something to do with ruminating or thinking about something in the past that happened or didn't happen. And maybe I keep thinking about that. But then on the flip side, and definitely dealing with anxiety and nervousness, things like that, a lot of that is overthinking things that might happen or might not happen. So, future tripping, I call it, or other people call it too. It's not my word. So when I notice that my mind is just hanging out in the past or in the future, I'm actually missing out on right now. And so for me, even though, in many ways the world is on fire right now, personal stress, societal stress, etc. In this immediate moment, my soft little cat's right here. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. I'm healthy. I can breathe easily right now. Like for me, this is in my immediate experience. So to me, being able to access the present moment like 100% without having my energy siphoned off to past stuff and future stuff, that actually is a very accessible way to practice self-care. And even just, we hear a lot about taking a breath, or for me, teaching mindful breathing, for example. The breath is always in the present moment, right? You can't take the past breath, and you can't take the breath of the future. I mean, when you think about it, you go, yeah, duh, I can only take this moment's breath. So when I even take like those 10 mindful breaths, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually plugging into the present moment. And because it's breathing, you're plugging into your physical body. And then you're using your mind to focus on the breath. So then you create that mind-body connection. And then, trying to keep your mind on the breath, that's a whole other challenge. Easier said than done. But that practice can help us access it. So, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I think that we could probably talk about this all day long. I mean, I want so badly to like dive into, each of your, daily work and how you see this working with people, but unfortunately we're not going to have time for that type of a conversation. I think that what we excuse me, I think that what we set out to do today, we have really, really accomplished. And that I'm just sitting here reflecting on the past 45 minutes of conversation and how much ground we've covered, from creating, you think about routine and how that builds habits, and how you've talked about actually really scheduling and writing out these things, not being afraid to speak up for ourselves. The powerful truth that people in the disability community know is that no one's going to advocate stronger for yourself than yourself, right? This is the beauty of the movement. What we're about to experience in July, looking back at what all of the advocacy and work that led to the passage of the ADA 30 years ago. That wasn't a group of people coming and advocating on behalf of someone else. It was self-advocates, right? Standing up and saying, we deserve something. And so to apply that concept here to self-care, I think is really, really powerful. The thing I want to say before I ask one question and let you both wrap it up is, the Ability Center has some really strong partners. And I love that you're talking so much about going outside, going for a walk at Wildwood, going kayaking. I would encourage everyone, if they haven't, to literally, when this is done, go and watch last week's webinar that we did with the Metro Parks. There's so many great examples of how anyone with any disability can go and enjoy the Metro Parks programming. It's just, they're doing some incredible work. And then you think about information and a really great community partner with our local library system, although kind of a tricky space still to navigate, their branches being open, but the library is such a wonderful place to go and invest in yourself and practice self-care. So just some partners that we have locally that are doing some really, really good work. So in wrapping it up, let's do this. This is good. I hope this is a fun way to wrap this up. Today's Thursday. People might be watching this on any day, but let's think about the next. If you were to give people advice, here's how I'll say the question. If you were to give people advice on what to do in the next 3 days, right? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, that's true. I watched this great webinar on self-care and I should really do that. I should care for myself more. And it's a nice aspiration, but what assurance do we have that it will actually happen? What would you tell people watching this to go do in the next 3 days? And then we're gonna wrap it up. Let's keep the order going. Jen?
So, number one, if you have the ability, make a list of things you're grateful for. At the very beginning of the day, it's going to set your mind in the right place. It's going to start your day on the right foot. If you're like me, before I hit that espresso, get out of my way. I'm ordering on the app. I'm not going to speak to anybody until I get it. But once you get it, no, I'm just kidding. Please just make a list, whether it's a daily journal, or there are some really great Pinterest ideas, or even at bookstores of like guided journaling. If you struggle with content, there's like questions and such. Another thing is, set a short-term and a long-term goal, just one of each, and have those goals be in the direction of self-care, doing things that bring you joy. And then lastly, when possible, just get some sun on your skin for just a few minutes. Just, soak that up, wear some, SPF 50 or greater. But just feel the warmth from that, get some fresh air. And if you have a furry friend, spend some time with them too. Sometimes I lay on my area rug and my bunnies just like hop over me, and it makes me think they like me, but I don't think they like me. But it's like, come to me. So if you have a furry friend, just spend some real time, put the phone away, stop taking the cute pictures of them, because that's what I do all day too, and just spend time. So gratitude, get some nature in your life, and spend a little bit of time with a furry friend or a furry human that you really, really enjoy being around.
That's great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Jen M.
Oh gosh. Okay. So in the next 3 days, I would say plan your work, work your plan. I would say get on your schedule some screen-free time and get outside.
Mm.
Get it on the schedule and just work it. Even if you're like, oh, I don't feel like it. Oh, this thing's going on in the world. All that, just stop. Just work your plan. Third thing, I would say here's a very brief practice. It's easy to do. We can do it right now. And if possible, Sam, maybe I can, and Jen, if you're interested, I can email over the technique. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called 5-4-3-2-1. And it's a way of using your 5 main senses to get into the moment. And you can do this, we'll do it like right now, and then you can do it anytime. So, and you just use your immediate environment. So you're not going to a fantasy land, you know, picture yourself on a beach. It's kind of, you use your senses. So 5, if possible, look for 5 things in your environment that you can identify with a word, like its shape, its color, the object's name. So go ahead and do that. Like look around your environment and look for 5 things. Okay, and then 4 things that you can feel, whether it's, you know, touching something or feeling it inside your body, the air on your skin. So 4 things you can feel. Okay, 3 things that you can hear, 3 distinct sounds or like a vibration, depending on your hearing situation. Maybe even hearing your own breath. Two things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. Maybe just lick your lips. Okay. So that's the simple exercise. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, using our main senses to directly access the present moment, no matter where you are. And it's a great way to use your mind to, well, not just your mind, your senses, to be in the moment instead of all the future stuff and all the past stuff. Just to give yourself a break. You know, you're kind of carving out a little bit of a moment. And you may notice things that you wouldn't notice before, and that may bring some peace and joy, even if you're in a tricky situation.
Well, and it is probably the understatement of the year to say that we've all faced some tricky situations in the first 6 months of 2020. It's been a doozy of a year, but this is what a wonderful break from all of that, and some really good learning. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for participating, and to everyone watching. We're going to archive this. We've been recording this conversation, and the good news is that I think almost everything we talked about is pretty timeless and will continue to be valuable moving forward. So if you want to share this with other folks, you're able to do that at our website. And we're going to keep the health and well-being conversation going next Thursday at 10 a.m. when we talk about telehealth and some of the different ways that that technology can be really, really useful to all of us in our healthcare needs. So Jens plural, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And to everyone participating, thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having us, and that was really great.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.